Today we're going to practice fractions of a measurement. Before we do that, let's review what we've been doing in math class, okay? So don't worry about the extension yet. And I know there's a mistake on your paper. This should be 13, not 1/3. So if you could fix your paper, just cross off 1/3 and write 13. Did you do that?
It's already 1/3 on ours.
I said it needs to be 13.
Oh.
Cross off 1/3 and write 13. Those were my exact words. There are 42 people at a museum. 2/3 of them are children. How many children are at the museum? Now before we do anything else, let's get our problem written down. Who knows what they think our problem might be?
42 times 2.
Okay, and we could even write it like this, Channing. Since it's a word problem, and I see our key word, what's our key word? Of. I could write 2/3 of 42 are going to be children. Okay? Now here's what you need to do. If you're not writing that, I would pick up my pencil and start writing immediately. Each problem we do today, we're going to use a tape diagram when we solve it. It's just part of the directions, okay? And you'll see it on Zern like that also. So I'm going to go ahead and make a tape diagram right over here. And I'm going to put my total on it. Blair, I need you to focus. Put my total on it. What's my total?
42.
Do I have a denominator?
Yes.
What's my denominator?
42.
What?
42.
What's my denominator?
3.
3. Is that also my divisor?
Yes.
So I can divide this into how many equal parts?
3.
How many am I trying to figure out?
2.
2/3. So you should set it up like that. If you want to turn that this way, you'll have more room. You have to pick it up to get it to switch around. Okay, so once you have this much done, look up. We're going to practice this the way it's going to be done in class today because I want you to get lots of practice with this, okay? So, 5th grade way of solving it. What would you put on the bottom? What are we dividing by? 3. What goes on the
2
top?
times 42.
2 times 42. Now, I know you're tempted to go ahead and multiply 2 times 42, but don't do it. We're going to factor it because you're not quite as confident doing it that way, and so we need to practice it a little bit more, okay? So how many times do you think 3 will divide into 42? Any ideas?
It's more than 10. That's
And it's less than 15 because 15 would be 45, wouldn't it? So should we try 14 and see what happens? Okay, over here do 14 times 3, or you could do 42 divided by 3.
14 times 3. 42 divided by 3 because then you know
Then you'll know the exact answer. What's the answer?
14.
14. So if I factor this, and I'm going to change the color of my pen so you can still see my handwriting, okay? I'm going to divide by 3. So 3 divided by 3 equals what?
1.
1. 42 divided by 3 equals 14. Okay, now I want to show you the mistake I saw a lot of yesterday. Kids just went ahead and took the 3 and wrote it here for the 14. Well, if I did that, look at this. That means my total would be 9, so that could not work, could it? What goes in the box here, boys and girls?
14.
14. So here's what I have. I have 2, are you looking at the board? 2 times 14 divided by 1. What's 2 times 14?
There's no point in writing different.
There's no point in writing it. I wrote this second line just so you could see my thinking, but there's no point in writing that, is there? either, is there? No. You can just write 2 or do 2 times 14 in your head. So my answer to how many of these people are children, the answer is what?
28.
28. So 2/3 equals 28 children. Now here's the rest of the question. I would go ahead and write that down so you know. If 1/3 of the children are girls, how many more boys than girls are at the museum? I mean, if 13 of the children are girls, how many more boys than girls are at the museum?
28 minus 13.
Okay, so Channing, I want to show you on tape diagram, okay? And then we'll do your problem. So, how many total are children?
2.
28, okay? And we have 13 girls. And she says 28 minus 13 would give us the answer to how many boys there are. Okay? So 28 minus 13 equals what?
15.
8 minus 3 is 5. 2 minus 1 is 1. So now, that's not the question, though. The question doesn't ask how many are boys. The question asks
2. There's 2.
how many more boys than girls are at the museum.
2.
Jenny says 2 more boys than girls are at the museum. Is she right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and 2 more boys than girls are at the museum. Okay, so how do you feel about that? That's what we've been doing for the last few days, but we're going to practice it the 5th grade way. And of course you don't need that step, do you? Okay, let's look at problem number 1. This is a fraction of a measurement. This is where your little cheat sheet will come in handy, Blair. So first of all, what are my measurement labels? Somebody tell me. Pounds and ounces. So look at your cheat sheet, and you're going to need to know how many pounds or how many ounces are in 1 pound. 16. Okay, here's what every problem will need. Your equal signs and the tape diagram. Get that on there right now. So here's what I need to know. What's my total amount? 1/4 pound equals how many ounces? What's my total amount? You think it's 1/4 or do you think it's 1 pound?
1 pound.
It's 1 pound. Now, the only thing is, I've got to go ahead and convert it. So what do you think my total amount needs to be? 16 ounces. So 16 ounces is my total. Do I have a denominator? What is it? That's what I divide by. What am I trying to figure out, Sadie?
1/4 of a pound.
1/4 of a pound. Okay, let's do the math over here. There's a strategy involved. You'll remember it when we get started on it. I'm going to write 1/4 times my total in pounds. How many pounds is this? Nope, that's how many ounces. How many pounds? 1 pound. So 1/4 of 1 pound is what I'm trying to figure out. Write it down. Sometimes I really like to write pound out so I don't get ones and the label confused, okay?
That's why.
So 1/4 of 1 pound Now I simply convert. So 1/4 times, now I can use ounces. So 1 pound equals how many ounces?
16 ounces.
16 ounces. And now I'm going to multiply. How do I multiply this? I'm going to do it here to save a little room. 1 times what?
1 times 16.
Divided by 4. So I can kind of ignore that 1, can't I? What's 16 divided by 4? 16 divided by 4 equals 4. Now, if I would have factored this out, watch what I would have done. I'm going to change the color of my pen. I would have said 4 divided by 4 equals 1. 16 divided by 4 equals 4. Are you watching? This is the number that goes in the box. A lot of times I write the whole thing so I can make sure my answer makes sense. So what's my answer to 1/4 of a pound? How many ounces? 4 ounces. Okay. When doing a problem like this is write my 3 equal signs. And you will need a tape diagram. Then I'm going to look at my measurement, my units of measurement. So I have feet and inches. So how many inches in a foot?
12.
So that goes on top of my tape diagram. Do I have a denominator? 4. So I divide my tape diagram into 4 equal boxes. What am I trying to figure out? 3/4. So write it like this. All right. The first thing I write, boys and girls, is the fraction times 1 foot. So 3/4 times 1 foot. Then I convert feet to inches. So 1 foot equals 12 inches. Now we're just solve the problem. Now I know you're tempted, instead of writing 3 times 12, to go ahead and write 36. But don't do it, because remember, our goal is to keep the numbers as small as possible. So does 4 divide evenly into 12?
Yes.
1 time. How many times?
3.
Okay. So my answer to what goes in the box is whatever I put right here. 3. So if I multiply 3 times 3,
9.
I'll get 9 inches. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's less than a whole foot, which would be 12 inches. But it's more than a half, which would be 6. Okay. So let's do the next one. And then we'll be ready for a problem set. Mr. Corsetti spends 2/3 of every year in Florida. How many months does he spend in Florida each year? The first thing we need to do is write the problem. Okay? We're converting from what to what? Years to months. So do it like this. 2/3 of a year equals blank months. How many equal signs?
3.
And the tape diagram. Okay, what goes on top of the tape diagram? Where'd you come up with 12?
12 months in a year.
12 months in a year. Do we have a denominator?
Yes.
3. So we'll divide by 3. And what are we trying to figure out?
How many are in 2/3?
2/3. Okay, and remember, the answer is almost the easiest part of this. So the first thing I do, I take my fraction times whatever that label is. 2/3 times 1 year. The next one, I convert from years to months. So 2/3 times 12 months. Okay, how do I write this problem?
2
times 12
divided by
divided by 3. Does 3 go into 12 evenly?
3. Yes.
How many times?
4.
So technically that would go in your boxes, whatever number you get right here. So then to get the answer to 2/3, because that's just 1/3, multiply times 2. So how many months is 2/3 of a year?
8.
8 months. Okay, fist of 5 on it. What do you think?
7.
Doing okay? All right. On your problem set, you don't have a choice. You have to write them down.